Crash Bandicoot, a name that takes you back to the PlayStation era. Wumpa fruit, spinning attacks, and those iconic sound effects. But Crash didn't stop there. He's been through it all. Kart racing, handheld games, mobile apps, and even a full-blown modern comeback. Today, we're taking a full look back at every single Crash game ever made. The good, the bad, and the downright weird. Let's take a dive in and trace the wild ride of gaming's most chaotic Bandicoot. The one that started it all. Introduced in 1996 for the original PlayStation and developed by Naughty Dog, Crash Bandicoot introduced us to a mutated marsupial with attitude. The game had a mix of behind-the-back, side-scrolling and 3D platforming levels. You ran through jungles, smashed crates, avoided deadly traps, and battled Cortex's minions to save Crash's girlfriend Torna. It was simple, but it had tight platforming and a colourful style. It was a huge success at the time, and for a good reason. The graphics were impressive, the music was catchy, and Crash had just the right amount of personality. Some critics felt the game was a little too linear or repetitive, but players didn't seem to care. Crash quickly became one of the PlayStation's unofficial mascots, and his first outing laid the foundation for what would become a massive franchise. Crash Bandicoot 2 came out just a year later, and right away you could tell it was an improvement. The controls were tighter, the levels were more creative, and there were new moves like sliding and belly flopping. This time, Cortex tricks Crash into collecting crystals under the pretense of saving the world, even though he's really planning another world domination scheme. The game introduced warp rooms and select levels, which became a staple. Fans and critics loved it. It was more polished than the first game, with better level variety and an overall smoother experience. It didn't reinvent the wheel, but it refined everything that made the original great. Cortex Strikes Back proved that Crash wasn't just a one-hit wonder. Crash Bandicoot Warped took everything to the next level. The third game added time travel, letting Crash and Coco explore ancient Egypt, medieval castles, and even the future. It mixed in vehicle levels like jet skis and motorcycles, keeping things fresh throughout. The boss fights were more imaginative, and the level design was more ambitious than ever. It's often considered the best in the original trilogy. Warped managed to stay true to Crash's roots while offering more variety and polish. The time travel gimmick worked really well, and the game oozed charm. This was Naughty Dog's last Crash platformer, and they went out on a high note. Crash Team Racing, or CTR, was Naughty Dog's final Crash game, and their answer to Mario Kart. It took the franchise into kart racing, with a full story mode, power-ups and split-screen multiplayer. Crash, Cortex and the crew had to defeat an alien racer named Nitrous Oxide by winning races across dozens of tracks. Fans absolutely loved it. It wasn't just a Mario Kart clone, it had tight controls, great track design and a solid single-player campaign. CTR proved that Crash could work outside of platforming and still deliver a quality experience. To this day, it's remembered as one of the best kart racers ever made. The Wrath of Cortex was the start of Crash's life outside of Naughty Dog. Developed by Traveller's Tales, it was the first Crash game on PS2, Xbox and GameCube. It followed the same warp room format but added a new character, Crash Bandicoot, and introduced elemental masked villains. The gameplay felt familiar, but maybe a bit too familiar. And that's where the criticism came in. While the graphics were upgraded, many felt it lacked the charm and tight design of the originals. It was seen as playing it safe, trying to copy the Naughty Dog formula without adding anything new. Still, it sold well and introduced Crash to a new generation of players. This was Crash's first handheld platformer on the Game Boy Advance. The story sees Cortex shrinking Earth, and Crash needs to collect crystals to bring it back to size. The game mimicked the structure of the PS1 games, but scaled things down for the GBA's limitations. For a handheld title, it worked surprisingly well. The graphics were clean, the gameplay was responsive, and it did a good job of capturing the spirit of Crash in portable form. It didn't reinvent anything, but it gave GBA players a solid way to enjoy Crash on the go. a direct sequel to the huge adventure. N-Tranced brought more of the same but added new levels, characters and mechanics. It introduced the hypnotist villain N-Tranced and featured time-based challenges and updated boss fights. Reception was decent, it was another solid handheld outing, but it wasn't a major step forward. Fans of the GBA platformers enjoyed it, but for those wanting innovation or big surprises, it didn't quite deliver. Still, it helped keep Crash alive on handheld. Crash Nitro Kart was the spiritual successor to CTR. Now developed by Vicarious Visions, it was released on PS2, Xbox and GameCube, with a full story mode and more elaborate track designs. The story involved Crash being kidnapped by Emperor Velo and forced to race in an intergalactic tournament. The reception was mixed. While it looked great and had more content than CTR, the controls and physics weren't quite as refined. Some fans loved it, whilst others stuck with the original. It kept the kart racing side of Crash going, even though it didn't quite reach CTR's levels. Crash Twinsanity took the series in a different direction. Instead of using warp rooms, the game had an open world structure with connected environments. Crash and Cortex were forced to team up, leading to a lot of slapstick humour and quirky level design. Critics were split. Some loved the fresh ideas and humour, whilst others were frustrated by technical issues and inconsistent tone. It was messy in spots, but it had charm and tried to evolve the Crash formula. Over time, it became something of a cult favourite. Crash Purple, or Crash Fusion in Europe, was a GBA crossover with Spyro. It mixed mini-games with short platforming sections, and had both Crash and Spyro teaming up to fight their respective villains, Cortex and Ripto. The concept was fun, but the execution felt shallow. The game leaned heavily on mini-games rather than traditional platforming, which disappointed some fans. Still, it was a cool experiment and brought two iconic franchises together, even just on handheld. Crash Tag Team Racing was another kart racer, but with a twist. Players could merge their cars with opponents mid-race for more firepower. It also had platforming hub areas between races and plenty of goofy humour. This one was creative, but not everyone was on board. The mix of platforming and racing didn't always gel, and the racing didn't feel as refined as CTR. Still, it tried to do something different, and the art style and writing gave it a fun personality. Crash Boom Bang was a party game for the Nintendo DS. It focused on mini-games and multiplayer, using touch controls and a board game format. It was Crash in name, but the gameplay felt more like a casual spin-off. Unfortunately, it didn't land well. The mini-games were repetitive, the controls felt clunky, and the critics called it one of the weakest Crash titles. It didn't add much to the franchise, and is mostly remembered as a misstep. Crash of the Titans marked a full reboot. New art style, new tone and new gameplay. Crash could now take control of enemies called Titans and use their powers to fight. It emphasised combat more than platforming, and it had a more edgy, modern look. The response was mixed. Some players liked the new direction, but long-time fans missed the classic platforming charm. It was a bold shift, but it alienated part of the fan base. Still, it kept the franchise in the spotlight and introduced new fans to Crash. A sequel to Titans, this game expanded the formula with a semi-open world, upgraded graphics and more mutant abilities. The humour was more self-aware and the game had local co-op, letting the second player control Coco. Reception was similar to Titans, a lot of ambition but not all of it landed. Some appreciated the open world approach, while others found it repetitive. It was the last major console Crash game for nearly a decade. After years of silence, Crash came back big with the Sane Trilogy. This remake of the original 3 games featured overhauled visuals, remastered music and tighter controls. It felt like a love letter to long-term fans. It was a massive hit. People loved seeing classic games brought to life with modern tech. It wasn't perfect. Some physics changes were controversial, but overall it reminded everyone why they fell in love with Crash in the first place. A remake of the original Crash Team Racing, Nitro-Fueled added new tracks, online multiplayer customization and sharp visuals. It was a full package aimed at both old school fans and new players. Reception was strong, the game played well and looked fantastic, though some players weren't thrilled about the addition of microtransactions. Still, Nitro-Fueled showed that CTR was just as fun and competitive as it was 20 years ago. Crash 4 was a true sequel to the original trilogy, ignoring the mid-2000 games. It featured tight platforming, mass powers with different mechanics, multiple playable characters, and some seriously tough levels. Critics praised the game for staying true to the spirit of Crash while pushing things forward. It was challenging, stylish, and packed with content. For many, it was the modern Crash game they'd all been waiting for. This mobile runner developed by King brought Crash to smartphones. It followed the endless runner formula, with swipes to dodge obstacles and collect items, and light crafting elements to take down bosses. It launched strong but struggled to maintain interest. While it looked great and had a lot of fan service, the gameplay loop became repetitive. The game shut down in 2023, ending Crash's brief run on mobile. The newest Crash title is Crash Team Rumble, a 4 vs 4 multiplayer game where players collect Wumpa Fruit and battle for control points. It's a mix of platforming and competitive arena gameplay. Initial reactions were mixed. Some found it fresh and fun, whilst others weren't sure about the shift away from the traditional Crash gameplay. But it's another sign that Crash is still evolving, trying new ideas instead of just leaning on nostalgia. So that's the complete history of Crash Bandicoot. From humble beginnings on the PS1, through experimental spin-offs, all the way to modern remakes and multiplayer battles. Crash has had his ups and downs, but one thing's for sure, he's stuck around for nearly 30 years and he's still got plenty of life left in him.
I'm back! Crash is back, folks. There has never been a better time.
If you enjoyed this full retrospective, give it a like, subscribe for more gaming history, and let me know in the comments down below. Which Crash game is your favourite and which one should have stayed in the warp room? That's it for now, I'll catch you on the next one.